It's time for the Rapides Parish Fair at the fairgrounds just past LSUA. You'll love the newest Mighty Thomas Carnival rides and your favorite Carnival classic foods on the Midway. Admission is just $2 per person and kids under 5 are free. Browse the vendor's alley or stop by the Why Not Stop stage for free entertainment. Go to rapidesparishfair.org for more information. We'll see you at the fair.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Let's Talk. Tonight we have on the show with us Quentin Anderson, candidate for Louisiana Congressional District number 6, Uncle Willie Chark, candidate for Alexandria Council District number 3. We'll be delving into some of the crucial topics like the upcoming Alpha political forum tomorrow at True Vine Baptist Church on Broadway, voter engagement and how nonprofit organizations and non-traditional and traditional media outlets are playing somewhat of a light role in this election this season. So I'm gonna ask you guys some poignant questions and all that kind of good stuff. Quentin, if you don't mind going ahead and introduce yourself a little bit, I greatly appreciate it. Steve, you can follow there right after.
Yeah, so I'm Quentin Anthony Anderson. I'm a Democratic candidate for Congress in the newly redrawn 6th Congressional District, and I've been in the race since March 17th officially. And so, yeah, I've just been part of this 5-person or 4-person, depending on how you look at our race, little circus that's been trying to get a little bit of attention, despite how important it is. As you noted, there have been some interesting ways that people have been covering this race, so it'll be interesting to talk about.
Oh yeah, well, you say 4, I say 2. That's all I've been seeing. I'll be honest with you.
Well, it depends on if signs vote. If signs vote, right?
Oh, okay. You qualified that. Okay, all right. Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Greetings. My name is Uncle Willie Chark. I'm candidate for District 3 City Council. District 3 is a district that I believe has been underserved for many years, especially the last 4 years. So I'm looking forward to tomorrow's forum at True Vine, hosted by the Alphas.
All right. The Alpha Phi Alpha candidate forum is, it's tomorrow. What do you see as a primary benefit of forums like this in helping voters better understand your platforms, and how do you plan to use this platform to possibly connect with the community?
The way I look at it is it gives us an opportunity as a candidate to get up close and personal with the constituents in our communities that will have that opportunity to cast a vote for us in this upcoming election. We haven't had too many opportunities to be in front of the public. Zion Hill hosted a forum in our area. New Scott Ollie hosted a community gathering, and that was the only 2 things that I was privy to. We did a couple of shows on the Let's Talk series, and I was invited on Vote Smart, but I'm ready to answer the tough questions that the citizens of our community have. My opponent in the last debate, she chose not to show up. And to me, that speaks volumes, because the citizens need a voice. And for so long, I feel like they have not had a voice in District number 3.
Same question to you, Quint.
Yeah, I think they're all important, because for a lot of people, as ideal as it would be to just hope that you can put up a really good website and that they will look it up. Most people get their information, from people and sources that they trust, churches, grassroots organizing organizations. And particularly going into this cycle, a lot of those organizations built up a lot of credibility by educating people in off years about the issues that were most affecting them, about sort of the power mapping structure of our government, and why these seats, particularly local races, are important. And so it has, been interesting that, a lot of these organizations have gotten a little bit quiet in this particular cycle because most of the voters who have gotten so engaged and have gotten so excited about this particular cycle look to those organizations. They were engaged by those organizations initially. So I think that that's why it's notable because a lot of those organizations are the people that these voters trust, and they're looking to understand the race. And when they go silent, you can kind of feel that energy being kind of sapped out of the room. So, these are important, and unfortunately, they're kind of few and far between in this cycle.
Yeah.
Quentin, to me, it seemed as though it's by design to create a low voter turnout when these organizations that would normally host events just not say anything. To me, that's troubling.
Yeah.
All right. We talked about those organizations. We've seen this decrease in voter engagement from those particular organizations. And specifically, we're talking about 501c3 nonprofits and 501c4 organizations. Why do you think these organizations are not as involved in voter education, voter outreach as they could be? What roles should they play in ensuring people are informed? I know, and I'm gonna qualify this a little bit. I know back in 2019, you basically had multiple armies of folk out, making sure we got everybody not only just registered to vote, but the big push then was just to make sure that those people who were already registered to vote go and exercise their rights to vote. So it was, and they did a pretty good job of it. I know here in Rapides Parish in 2019, we turned, the parish itself. If you look at it, I think it was the New York Times that looked at parish and counties across the country, and they kind of gauged them. They gave them a blue, a red, or a pink. Rapides historically have been deep red, and it turned pink. And since the 2019 election, you basically have not seen any engagement, from organizations. And I would be a little bit more specific. Organizations like the NAACP, the Power Coalition for Equity and Justice, VOTE, Step Up, and the list goes on and on. And if I miss one of y'all, please step up and say I missed you. But I haven't seen it, and to me, with the idea of thoughts like go vote, but hold your political, the folk who you elect to go in office, hold them accountable. Where is that, reinforcement at this point in time? I don't know, but what role do you think these organizations should play in ensuring people are informed and ready to go vote, Quint?
Well, I mean, I think they have obviously an important role. I mean, a lot of the organizing that they did led to, for example, the district that I'm running in. A lot of that work that they did, a lot of that voter engagement. It wasn't just behind the scenes stuff. It was actual, popular support that kind of pressured the legislature to do it. I think at the heart of it, what it is when the sort of uniformity that you saw in 2019 only happens in this state when there are not competitive races, where it's really easy just to say vote for the D, right? It's really easy to vote for the one person. And you saw that in my particular race where they were trying to clear the field so that there was one candidate, and therefore it's not so much about the person and it's more about the sort of symbolism. We're going to get an African American that's going to get elected to Congress. Don't worry about who that person is or the policy. Just worry about kind of the symbolic progress. When you have competitive races, all of a sudden, what you end up having, particularly with a lot of these groups, is you have allies that they've worked with behind the scenes, and you've sort of normalized, the fact that they may not be the most articulate on the issues, and they may not be ethically or principle, from a values perspective, what we publicly align ourselves with, but they've been good sort of practical allies behind the scenes. But then when it comes to elections, they're sort of put in a rock and a hard place. They have these political allies that they've been working with that are not popular with the voters and can't really speak to what the voters care about. But these are who their power alliances are with. And then you have other candidates that are actually talking about the issues, or you have voters that are talking about issues that the candidates that they're allied with aren't talking about. And they kind of find themselves in these sort of tricky situations of, are they responsive to the people, or are they responsive to these relationships that they increasingly value, because that's sort of what has given them a lot of relevance. And what I think the problem is you have to stay with the principles. Your principles have to be consistent. You can't sort of, move with who your political allies are in the moment. If your principles are about grassroots engagement, if your principles are about, voter turnout, then if ultimately people that you've worked with are anti those principles, then you have to stay consistent with those principles. So you have to hold these candidate forums, because if your whole principle has been voter education, then it can't matter that your ally doesn't want to participate. That's on your ally. Your principles have always been about, information, transparency, accessibility. You can't change those because your political allies all of a sudden have different political interests. And that is sort of what it feels like. Now, and the last thing I'll say on this, though, is I know that some of these organizations, and this goes into sort of a deeper thing, some of these organizations think that by taking their hands off of these races, that is their way of helping. That, what I could do is I could accept the money on behalf of your opponent or on behalf of these other interests, and then I could play a heavier role. I think that folks have to have the principles enough to say that regardless of what might be, attractive to me, we have to do what we always do, whether it hurts us or it helps us in any given cycle. And that's kind of the message that, I'm hoping these organizations get, which is, I get that you've had some of these alliances, but voters expect you, the people who have empowered you to be in these rooms of power to represent us, they expect you to be consistent time in and time out. And whether it's an ally that, is anti-democratic or not, you have to be consistent every cycle because they're looking to you. They trust you. So when you start to act different come an election, that starts to eat at some of that brand equity that you've built.
Steve, you have any thoughts on it?
Quentin's absolutely right. I think some of these organizations have gotten into bed with the wrong people. And with that being said, they feel as though they're loyal to those individuals, and they just say, screw the people at the end of the day. And that's just breaking it down to where people can understand it. At the end of the day, they have a civic organization and a moral obligation to make sure that they continue to educate the people, not only during an election, but all year round. It's funny that we see you, doing non-peak elections, or when the water's not hot, and you make these alliances with these individuals, and you just say, you know what, people, we're just going to go ahead and sit back and continue to let you guys figure it out and not educate. And they're wrong for doing that. And a lot of times that creates a bad look on those organizations when they do that. You have to be consistent, and you have to put the priority of the people first, instead of your own personal feelings.
Yeah. And one thing I'll say, just to piggyback on that, is that I don't want to, I'm not naive. I get that when elections are over, you have to deal with the folks in power that you have to be able to get progress. But the point that I'm trying to make, and I think the point that Uncle Willie's trying to make, is when it comes to elections, if you are true to your principles, you also have to be open to the possibility that some of the people that you work with when it's an off year may not be the people that the people want to support. And you have to be consistently true to the people. So, and I'll be even more explicit. If for the last couple of years you've worked on some racial justice issues with Senator Cleo Fields, and he's helped you get it passed, That's great. That's pragmatic. You have to work with the legislature that you have. But if then Cleo Fields goes into an open race and he's not the candidate that is most aligned with your values, or he wants you to participate in activities, or he wants you to do things that are contrary to what your principles and your values are, what you have to do is you have to be able to understand what business is. Business is, from 8 to 5 at that Capitol, we will work with you because we have to. But at the end of the day, our job is true to our principles. Our job is to educate the voters. So if when you go before our voters, no matter what work you've done with us, if our voters don't want to vote for you, there's nothing that we can do. We're not going to change our behavior because you did something for us when we worked with you. What did Tip O'Neill say? No permanent friends, no permanent enemies, just permanent interests. And the permanent interests of these organizations need to be voter engagement, voter information, voter turnout.
Point blank and simple, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Quentin, again, you're running for this new congressional District 6 seat, which spans, from Baton Rouge to Shreveport and swing over to Lafayette and area. How, in an ideal world, how would just the nonpartisan process of these organizations working in tandem, working together, how could these nonprofit organizations help to get that voter turnout in these various different areas?
Talking about the race, I mean, talking because for a lot of voters, if it were not for their involvement with an and this isn't me calling out any of these are just organizations that are involved in races. If it were not for vote, they may not know who's on the ballot. If it were not for Power Coalition, they would not know. And so you have to have fidelity to that understanding. The old phrase, if you know better, you got to do better. These organizations know that a lot of voters depend on those organizations for all of their election information. Mm-hmm. And so what they have an obligation to do is, particularly in race, and I'm being selfish about my race. I hope Uncle Willie talks about his. But if when people talk about the race to your organization, they're like, "Oh, I didn't even know there were other people running." Your obligation needs to then be like, "Oh yeah, no, there are these other," and I'm not just talking about me. There are 4 other people running. So your obligation needs to be, here are all the people, and you have to, and hopefully we've educated you enough where you know what your interests are, and we're going to give you the information. But I do think that they think that if, for example, they know for a fact that giving more exposure to other candidates threatens somebody, they think that that's bias, and that's wrong. It's just an open process. If your ally can't win in an open process, and that's their problem. But at the end of the day, you have to provide these platforms for information just to be available. And if your feeling is doing that tips the scales, that says something about who you've gotten into bed with.
Well, I can only speak from the past, and these organizations have the ability to certainly make sure that the public know who the candidates are that are running. But again, I'm not seeing that here. Uncle Willie, you've been deeply involved in this District 3 race. What are some of the specific actions you think local nonprofits could take to help combat this voter apathy that we see, especially dealing with among the younger voters here in our community? Because the younger voters here appear to be the most disengaged in this in this race across the board. This even applies to you, Quentin.
I talk to people on a daily basis, and they really don't know that any election is about to take place, and they just thinking presidential election. And I have to educate the people that you have more than just the president to vote for. You have local races, you have district in Alexandria, you have District 1, 3, and at-large race. You also have the 6th congressional district. You also have a judgeship. But the people don't know because people are not engaging them. The local media, they're not really talking about voter engagement. we're not really talking about voter registration drives and stuff like that. Even if we never register anybody else to vote again, if we engage the people who are already registered to vote, we would have an awesome turnout at the polls. You know, the local DPEC in this area, they're not doing anything about voter education and voter engagement. And I'm a part of that organization. But we chose not to have meetings the last 2 months. You know, is that design, you know, by the chair? I don't know. You know, you have to ask yourself. When I was chair, you know, I made sure that I had meet and greets for all the candidates for every election that was coming on the ballot. You know, whether it was a governor race, whether it was a local race, we owe it to the people to educate the people and bring the people forward so the community can ask questions. Because at the end of the day, the community are the ones that's hurting. You know, in District Number 3, you know, we had our current councilwoman, you know, she voted on a restore program, and she said publicly that she didn't even read the ordinance or didn't understand it. And it put over 8,000 people in the dark. We still have thousands of people in the dark right now in the city of Alexandria. We have no recreational facilities open for our youth at all, you know. So we have a lot of issues, and nobody want to address the elephants in the room. And is it by design?
Yeah, and I do think that, you know, if you already know, because I know that this was happening in, I think, Lafayette, where the base of the party was saying something very different. And this is just from the party's perspective. The base of the party, the voters that were coming in, were saying something very different than the candidate, you know, in terms of where their support was versus where the official party's support was. And when you keep getting that, you can either be responsive to it and accommodating to it, or you can kind of cut off. You can start, you know, not having those meetings. You can start not engaging with people because you just don't even want to entertain it. Again, I think it just comes down to there are folks who are uncomfortable with the possibility that the base of their electorate, that the voters that they engage with, might have a very different perception of this race than what is most convenient for a lot of these organizations, including the local parties.
Listen, this is something Kendall Daniel just said. He says to effectively delegate within these organizations, it is crucial to identify individuals who are genuinely committed to the mission. Unfortunately, many have become more focused on financial gain rather than staying aligned with the organization's core purpose. We need to ensure that we prioritize mission-driven leadership and accountability to maintain the integrity of our goals.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. I mean, and there's a lot. Like, I've worked in nonprofit since I got out of law school, and I've, you know, sometimes we joke about it that you know, all of a sudden, you know, your organization is focusing on racial justice because that's where all the foundations are issuing the money, and you know, nonprofits get used to this idea of, you know, you got to scrape for survival, and sometimes you got to focus on issue areas based on where just like the zeitgeist of the funding is. But I do think that what the commenter said is absolutely correct. You also have to have the courage to be willing to stay put, even if the money goes somewhere else, even if the power goes somewhere else. And you got to, you know, from a business perspective, you got to be able to diversify where you're getting money so that you don't fall prey to that. Where if the only person or the only entity that we're getting money from is, you know, the local mayor's office or something like that, then when the mayor decides that, you know, they want to focus on this, then we kind of have to do that as well. You got to be able to, you know, be responsible enough from a fiscal perspective so that you don't fall into these situations where you are in bed with folks that you shouldn't be, and you end up having to go against your organizational principles because you have to think about, you know, the next fiscal year.
You know, non-traditional media outlets like Urbancast here, we you know, and this is not a toot my own horn, but the reality is the reality. We have become vital in reaching different audiences within our community, and not only just the city of Alexandria, but across central Louisiana. And this question go to both of you guys. How do you see platforms like this helping to bridge the gap in voter education? And how can we all do more to engage civic engagement through these channels? Quentin, I don't know where Steve went.
Yeah, I was gonna. Okay, I can go until Uncle Willie gets back.
Mhm.
But I think it's hugely important, and there are other outlets that are sort of the same independent voice in that same sort of vein in other communities across this district, and they're vital. One, because people don't get their information from a single channel anymore. This isn't the 1950s where it's ABC, NBC, and CBS. People get their information from all the different places where they are. They get it from friends that share stuff, and so having independent outlets is important just to be able to fill that gap. But it's also important from, I think, a transparency perspective. A lot of people have lost faith with the corporate media, and it's partly because they've become more attuned to how the corporate media works, what drives their decisions, how information gets filtered, and so they're looking for independent media. They're looking for folks that are committed to a cause and don't need to make billion-dollar profit margins, and therefore have to make all sorts of disturbing compromises to be able to get information out to people. They like being able to go to somebody that they like being able to go to outlets that may not be very big, but at the expense of being big, they have the ability to be nimble and independent. They like knowing that they can sort of poke and prod at the sources where they're getting information from, because they don't trust where they traditionally got information from. So I think that outlets like this are hugely important in a time where people just are so distrustful of established institutions.
With that being said, traditional media, you have to wait on that news cycle. So you have to wait for the 4 o'clock news, the 5 o'clock news, 6, 8, 10, whatever. And with this new digital age, people, they want the microwave effect. They want to be able to look at it when they want to look at it, and be able to rewind it when they want to rewind it. So I welcome this new digital age in technology where, people can, use an iPhone or integrate into an iPad and able to give their story, and it's seen by, thousands and millions of people, in real time. And that's what these media outlets, they're not adjusting to the times, and younger people, even the older people, they set up those notifications to get notifications with different outlets and stuff like that. So I think we need to move forward, and some of our government is just that antiquated. We're stuck in the past, and we don't want to move forward and utilize the technology and stuff that we have at our fingertip and our disposal.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I know we kind of talked about the political forum over at Truvine on tomorrow. So at the end of tomorrow, and we will be covering the forum. I was supposed to get an opportunity to interview the president of the organization, but it's been extremely busy over here on our part. You see, I'm here at 9:24 tonight trying to get this interview in before.
Yeah.
But it's definitely to say to the young folk who out there who are following us, and the elderly folk over here that are following. Tomorrow I do know, the Alphas did invite all of the different candidates, and they've been very professional all along. I mean, and in years past. And so I definitely want to give a plug to the brothers over there at Alpha Phi Alpha for their commitment for not backing down and different things of that nature.
And I expect no less. I expect no less.
Well,
there's no bias. There's no bias here.
So it's clear that this brother right here is an alpha.
I expect no less from the brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha Incorporated. Yeah.
All right. You threw me off a little bit on that one, but I would expect nothing different. So hey, that's not a problem. But we definitely want to applaud them because they are always there each election cycle. If no one else is there, they're there. And that's a very true statement for this community. And they're one of the only staples that are going to do it no matter what, And so good for them. But at the end of the day, what do you guys want to see? What would you like to see as an outcome on tomorrow when you leave this last forum that's planned here in Central Louisiana? What would you guys like to see?
Well, what I want to see, I would like to see the community come out, first of all, and get a clear understanding about the issues that our community face. For so long, this government here in Alexandria has been overlooking District Number 3, as far as economic development, as far as crime, lack of recreational activities, affordable housing, the list go on and on. So I want the people to come out and listen to somebody who has a clear plan and willing to talk to the people and to break it down in terms to where they can understand it. Houston, we truly have been misrepresented for many years, and it's time for change. And I don't think the people can wait another 4 years for somebody to still learn. We need somebody to go in on day one with a plan to say, how can we, and that's willing to be the voice for the voiceless.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I guess what do I want to see at it tomorrow? I mean, it would be nice to see Cleo Field show up at one of these. That'd be wonderful. But aside from that, I hope that there is great interest. I hope that there is good physical attendance. I hope there's good online attendance. I hope that people understand what's at stake. And I know that kind of becomes a talking point every election, that it's all, the end of the world is at stake and your future's at stake, but it always is. Your interests are always at stake every election, whether you pay attention to it or not. And people take advantage of your apathy. So my hope is that folks are tuned in, particularly because the less of these that there are, the more valuable the ones that do exist are. And then obviously, selfishly, I'm hoping that this is the best one of them all, because hopefully there's a little bit of home field advantage with the ice cold brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha. But I'm excited. I'm excited. Any opportunity I get to be able to talk to the voters, I'm always excited.
I've seen only integrity in those brothers, especially the ones from here in Alexandria. So I don't think they're gonna give you no slack at all, bro.
Well, I want all the smoke. I will take all the questions. Especially since there seems to be a vacancy of some of the candidates. I'll take theirs too.
With that being said, the Zion Hill forum was wonderful, but I really would like to take some public questions, some stuff that's not scripted, and have more time to elaborate on some of those issues.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. That is true. That is true. Those genuine questions that come from the audience, and especially when you make the audience feel like your question is important, and and folk answer those questions.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. You see that last question there? It says, cool. Can we hear the plans? Quick synopsis, brief overview of where your leadership will lead. What's the vision?
Well, I'll start with that one. My biggest issue, I have 4 bullet points. Pocketbook issues. Why is it that 90% of your income is going to the city of Alexandria in utilities? Crime is 248% above the national average, if not higher. What are we doing to recruit? We need young cadet programs. We need young EMT programs. We need to start, I say, in third, fourth grade, getting these kids involved in those programs and just educating them. Youth recreational, we need robust after-school tutorial programs as well as after-school programs. Right now, our kids are, confined to the streets or home, and parents don't have the funds to, per se, put them in environment to where they're already cash strapped and transparent in city government. At our local city council meetings, the public they're not able to ask questions. It's no transparency in breaking policies down. We just rubber stamped the budget, and you weren't able to review that budget. The only way you were able to review it is if you went down to the council chambers during business hours. We're not investing. We're taking money out of districts number 1, 2, and 3, African American districts, and we're funding the city off the backs of them with high utility costs. 52%, approximately 52% of the budget is operated off the sales of the utilities. So we have to break it down, and we have to get money on our side of town to do major improvements.
Yeah, and I think for me, one, I have a website with an issues page that has like 50 issues. If you don't see something that you care about on there, you can fill out a form and ask me, and I'll not only answer it, but I'll make it public. But I think the underlying sort of vision that I'm running under is that I think that our government can't really be responsive to the people's needs if it's run by bought and paid for politicians that get into bed with certain interests, and then what they pursue once they get elected, they might give you a turkey dinner or a backpack full of school supplies before election day, but they figure that that's the extent of their delivery, and then they will pursue the interests of those that are funding their campaigns after election day. You'll hear from them again with that turkey dinner and that backpack the next election, but in between, your interests aren't being advocated for. And so my belief is that when you have independent representation, and I make a clear distinction, that doesn't mean that I don't have an ideology. If you elect a conservative or you elect a progressive, they have a view of how they want to address your issues. But at the very least, if they're not bought and paid for, they have an independence to be able to address your issues. Yes, through the lens of their ideology. If you elect a Republican, they're going to want to do it through free market and deregulation and low taxes. If you elect a progressive, they're going to want to do it through a government that is actually proactive. But whatever it is, your interests then get pursued. And so what my vision is that hopefully if we can win, what that does is it sort of breaks the dam in this state and in this town and in this district, where grassroots candidates that are closest to the pain, closest to the people, actually have a reasonable shot at winning and being able to represent the people. And right now you don't have that. So hopefully if I win, what that is it's a signal that there's sort of a different political environment, a different tide has come to Louisiana. I hope that it enables other candidates, hopefully not as broke as me, but equally as passionate, to be able to run and have that independence to be able to represent their district and not, political donors, not even a party agenda, but be able to represent their district with the sort of objectivity that I think that you need to be able to be bold and unapologetic in that representation.
Okay, I thank you guys for that. I'm pretty sure the person who asked that question, God complex, you guys answered it. And
there it is. Oh, there we go. There it is. There it is.
There it is.
Of course, a good substantive question at the end of this would come from a nice cold brother of Alpha Phi Alpha. Again, they never let me down.
All right. So as we wrap up tonight's discussion, I want to take this moment to say, hey, thank you, Quentin. Thank you, Uncle Willie, for sharing your insights and your plans to engage voters in a meaningful way for the rest of this campaign, particularly on tomorrow. Remember, to everybody that's out there in cyber world, there is an election coming up on November the 5th. It's right around the corner, and it's essential that we all take part in shaping the future of our community. And if we're talking about the District 6, Congressional District 6 race, that spans from Baton Rouge to Shreveport, swings over to Lafayette. And if we're talking about Alexandria City District number 3, we know that's in the southeast corridor of the city of Alexandria. But it's really important that we get out there and pay attention to those offices. A special thank you to Math Makes Sense, National Auto and Tire, Sadler's Towing, Long's Product, the Peter Williams campaign, the Uncle Willie Chart campaign, and to the Rapides Parish Fair. Your support of us help us bring these type of discussions to the public here in our community. I definitely want to say, without our supporters out there, thank you all for tuning in. Let's keep this conversation going, and don't forget, for whatever there is, to get out there and go vote. If you guys can hang tight right quick, I'm gonna go ahead and end this stream.
It's time for the Rapides Parish Fair at the fairgrounds just past LSUA. You'll love the newest Mighty Thomas Carnival rides and your favorite Carnival classic foods on the Midway. Admission is just $2 per person, and kids under 5 are free. Browse the vendors alley or stop by the Why Not Stop stage for free entertainment. Go to RapidesParishFair.org for more information. We'll see you at the fair.